So today we're gonna cover screen replacement, puppet tool, rotoscopy, and render outputs. Okay. So for the screen replacement one, I'm going to import this footage. This one that I had taken earlier. This is not a high res footage, but it will do. I mean मोबाइल से लिया हुआ है तो फोकस नहीं आई मीन ठीक से नहीं हुआ था यहाँ का ब्राइटनेस ले लिया साथ सब कुछ डार्क कर दिया बट काम तो चल जाएगा सो व्हाट आई एम गोइंग टू डू इज नाउ आई वांट टू replace the screen with এটা তো আমি এটা তো এটা অ্যাকচুয়ালি দিস অ্যাকচুয়ালি গ্রিন কালার সলিড দ্যাট আই হ্যাভ you know হ্যাঁ বলো this is actually green solid color that I filled with the desktop as a desktop background. So what I'm going to do is I want to replace the screen, this green screen, with some other footage that is going to be, let's say, this one. High track brain logo, and I know what it is. So that's going to be. Actually, let's open it on layer panel, footage window, and then wow, ये वाला. So this one I'm going to use. So I want to use this footage as the screen of the desktop. So what I'm going to do is now to do this kind of screen replacement thing we need to actually track the motion of the screen, but here we need a lot of information like perspective, and actually we need to fit the four corners of the footage perfectly with the corners of the screen. So for that actually what we need to do is we use this plugin called Mocha or motion capture. I think that's the short form for Mocha AE, and that is basically a plugin. That means some other developer make this thing, and that comes with camera tracker is for 3D camera tracking. You can do with camera tracker also, but Mocha is going to give you much more. This for this kind of thing we don't need a 3D camera tracking. When you have some 3D object that you want to place in that in a 2D imagery, then you need to do 3D camera tracking. So in this case we are going to use Mocha AE, and we want to actually let's change it to frames time code. So I'm going to hit control and click here once. So from 0 frame to 122 frame of this footage that we need to track in Mocha AE. So I'm going to select the footage at first, then I'm going to go to this animation window, and from there I'm going to click track in Mocha AE, and it is going to open the Mocha interface and register later. Then what should I configure or not? Okay, start Mocha AE, and then the footage is gonna come like this, and 143, that is actually what we okay 122 till 122 frames we need here. So 122, I'm going to change it to 22, and the default location is Adobe After Effects, some E drive. I'm okay with that, and the frame rate is it's showing 29.97. I'm not going to change it because generally it takes the actual footages. It matches with the actual footages frame rate and all. So I'm just going to hit OK, and there was a file previously, so I'm just going to hit yes, and now we have this footage and we get same timeline here in Mocha AI. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this region at first, and for that we use this pen tool and to select this region. So this is maybe going to, I want to cover the entire area, and this is how you select a particular region that you want to track. And now if I click if right click, and it's going to be done like that. And now we need to create a plane, and that is this thing, show planar surface. And what I need to do is I need to adjust these corners, and you can see a magnified view here in the left upper left corner. So this is the first corner, this is the second corner. This plane determines the perspective information, and the first region that we have created, that is the region where the tracking is going to happen. So maybe somewhere here maybe, and the last point somewhere here. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to track forward. This is the track forward button, and let's do track forward. So it did not have done a proper job here, so let's hit Control Z. It will undo the entire thing. Actually we can do it again anyway. So this time we are going to check perspective on. So this was not on, turned on. And after that now I'm going to track it again. So let's see what happens this time. Maybe a little bit more. This time it have done a nice job. So now what I'm going to do is simply export this information into After Effects. So go to export tracking data, and I'm going to click on export tracking data. Now we have three core options. One is After Effects corner pin data. The entire information is going to come as a corner pin effect. After Effects corner pin supports motion blur, we don't need that. After Effects transformation data, and we also don't need that. So the first one, the default one, that is the one I'm going to choose here. And either you can copy to clipboard, and that's it. I have copied the entire data into my clipboard. Now if I go back to After Effects and apply this effect called corner pin, I think I can just hit Ctrl V, and what is going to happen, oh not here, on this layer, if I hit Ctrl V, then what is going to happen is it is going to create a corner pin effect, and there if you hit U, you can see all the um, keyframes are copied here. And now if I hit play, the 90% job is over, and extra little bit of tweaking is needed, and that is we need to expand the edges a little bit. And reflection, you can change that, but we're not gonna do that right now, because you can create a another copy of this thing here, and maybe a little bit change the transparency a little bit. But now what we need to do is, actually I'm going to create a pre-comp, and I'm going to leave all attribute outside, because obviously we need this tracking data outside of the pre-comp. And let's go to screen, and now if I go into the pre-comp, then what we can do is we can actually expand, we can log the aspect ratio, and we can actually expand the footage a little bit, maybe something like this. And we can select the layer and hit Alt Control F to fit to screen. It's just expanding the outer region of the actually this layer. So it's not similar to scaling up the footage, and almost done. A little bit, you can go to the position, you can change the position, or maybe you can scale up a little bit. That will like 0.1, and we can do the same thing here also. We can just expand the composition a little bit more, and hit Alt Control F. So that is how you can replace a screen in Mocha AI. You can try it. You can, to match with the background color and all this thing of this footage. I don't know, maybe I will add a level, and maybe I will just tone down the brightness a little bit. Because the maximum dark here is this kind of pitch black. And then maybe each LS a little bit desaturation is needed, and let's say a little bit glow is needed. That is needed, and maybe glow radius, because some light should come to this area. And maybe I will make the screen blending mode, and maybe 0.5 amount of glow, a little bit glimpse of it. And what else we need is, if we can feather out the edges a little bit also, and for that we can simply, there is a different ways to do it. Right now what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to duplicate this footage, and in this footage I'm going to, the bottom one, I'm going to add fast blur. So a little bit blurriness at the edges, and maybe on top of it I will create an adjustment layer, and because I have added this blurred image in the background, that's why. And then I'm going to add the level to do a little bit, final color retouching. Maybe I will make it a little bit bright, and now the glow seems a little bit too much. Maybe a little bit bluer, a little bit yellower. So the color correction I'm applying on top of everything, so the same color get for everything. And maybe from here I will bring down the glow a little bit, 0.3, and this is it actually. ठीक है. Mocha AE. After that, let's go to the puppet tool. And what could be a nice example? So let's pause the video for a while. Let's create a shape layer, 1920 by 1080. Okay, 1920 by 1080, 24. That's it. Let's create a shape layer, and maybe it's a hand. Actually, we're going to take the pen tool again, and maybe we need another few points. Okay. So this is what you have got. स्ट्रेट बनाने से अच्छा होता नहीं, मतलब स्ट्रेट हैंड. So this is a style of puppet animation. This is a puppet pin tool. So what I'm going to do is, the first thing we need to do is, actually let's create a pre-comp of this thing, so we get a simple layer. Not now, it's not no longer a shape layer, it's just another layer in After Effects. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to create puppet pin joints. That is basically something like plastic tool in Open Tools. So the first thing we do is we create basic joints. So maybe the first joint will be here, and the second joint will be here, and whenever we create a joint, it's get created here somewhere. puppet pin 1, puppet pin 2, and the third joint is here, you can see, and maybe the fourth joint is gonna be here. So now what we can do is we can simply select these individual joints and we can move them like this, okay, like a smooth mesh. Now the thing is, unlike OpenToons, we don't have any hierarchy system in this thing, in this puppet effect. Actually this is an effect, it comes as an effect. So, and you can see that if I hit U now, it is going to expand all the keys. Matlab, first time when you create a puppet pin to puppet pin in a layer, it automatically creates first keyframe for you. So now any changes you are going to make, you are just creating another keyframe. And another thing is there is some options, so let's explore them. And we don't need, again we don't have any uh, hierarchy system here, so nothing is, one pin is not parented to the other pin, so all of the pins are actually independent from each other. But you can change the all this thing, this paths distance, हाँ वो तो उसमें रहता है plastic tool in open tools. Now we have few options to change the rigidity and softness of this layer. And what we can do is if I select the puppet pin tool, then we have few options. First thing is mesh, and you can check this show button, then you will see the mesh, and you can change, you can increase the number of triangles, that is actually increase the mesh quality. And there is this option called extension. If you have some little dots and that kind of some information at the edge of the character, then you can expand the mesh and you can include that too. By default it's 3 pixel expansion. And what you can do apart from this is you can, if you simply hit control with the puppet tool selected, and if you hover over on a puppet pin, you can see you get this kind of watch icon. So now I can simply move this hand like this, and you can see the time indicator is running. That means it's actually capturing the data, and in the real time it's going to give us that movement. So if you need something like that, you can do it. Again, I'm going to do the same thing for this one also. Some weird movement is gonna happen, and again, okay, chalo. So let's hit Control Z. Now we have some those information, which is the rigid tool. And acha, we have puppet overlap tools. When you are overlapping, let's say this shape is overlapping this shape, and here you can change the stacking order. So if I select this puppet tool and if I make it just 2, actually I can add a overlapping point. So this region are going to overlap. So it's gonna be in front, and let's hit the extend, it is going to now overlap. So this kind of things we have here, but the essential tool is actually, let's avoid this thing, and is the puppet starch tool. And by using this tool you can make certain areas rigid. You can again show the mesh if you want, and you can, let's say I want to make this area, okay, so I will have to work on the default pose. So I want to make this area rigid, and maybe I don't know, this area a little bit rigid, maybe this area a little bit rigid. And now what I can do, for each and every points, I can change these values, which is either extent, I can change the extent and the amount. And if you increase the amount, you can see this grayish, this color is getting opaque. That means it's affecting more and more, and it's making this point much more rigid. And then I'm going to select another point and I'm going to do the same thing, a little bit expansion and a little bit more rigid, and then again this point a little bit extension and little bit rigid, and I can actually change these points whenever I want. Okay, and now if I say the animation, we have this areas rigid. So again you can change these positions, that will affect the animation. Now this is basically puppet tool in After Effects. So by using this tool you can do a lot of animation, and people are doing it for actually for animations, also infographic videos and a lot of things, character animation also people are using it, along with the liquify tool. You can apply the liquify effect on it and you can create a keyframe for the mesh distortion, and in the next keyframe, okay, let's say that in this next keyframe the hand is going to be somewhere here like this, and under this pre-comp you can change the number of drawings. Okay, so those things you can do, obviously open hand to close hand, you can basic thing. And let's say in this point if I go to the liquify tool and if I select this tool, and maybe I will go to the brush warp brush option, warp tool option, expand the diameter and maybe pressure, increase the pressure, and what I can do, I can create a little bit muscle, but it is affecting too much, so it's distorting the shape too much. Again go back, increase the brush diameter a bit more. So yes, this is the puppet tool in After Effects. Any question? So I want you guys to explore these tools, and after that we have rotoscopy. And anyone have a footage? So let's see that what we have. Let's talk about the export options that we have. So let's talk about the render queue of Adobe After Effects. So to add to an animation or a composition in render queue, what the first thing that we need to check, what is the in point and the out point of our animation, and this is the in point and out point which you control by the shortcut B and N. So let's say this is the out point, and by default settings of render queue this region is going to be rendered. You can change it, this is called the work area, and you can change it to the entire composition, but the default settings is the work area. And to add this composition to the render queue, what you have to do is go to file and go to export, then add to render queue, this option. We have another option to add to media encoder queue, I'm coming to that later on, but add to render queue, and the shortcut for this is Control M. So I can just hit Control M in my keyboard, and that is going to add this composition to the render queue. And let's check out what are the options we have for rendering, and why is it called render queue. You are working on my ওইটাই তো দেখালাম, কম্পোজিশনই তো ওপেনই করেছে, কম্পোজিশন তো ওপেন করেছিলাম আমি। Okay, then the another thing is the reason it's called queue, that is you can add multiple number of the composition into your render queue. So again I'm going to hit Control M, that is going to add this composition to the render queue, and by default it takes the files, the composition's name as the file's name. You can change it. Obviously you can add multiple number of compositions in it. Not only that, just the thing is, before you hit render, this check button needs to be checked, otherwise it is not going to be rendered. And another thing is, you can actually duplicate here also. You can make different duplicates and change the, maybe this one I want a video file and this one I want an image sequence. I can do that. So one after another this render is gonna happen, and with different settings. So let's check out the render settings at first. So uh, maybe I'll delete this too. And here we have the first thing, we have this blue text. We can click on them, that is going to give us more options. The first one is the render settings, and from here is showing the base settings. That means we are not compromising in the with the quality of the render. You can either render in base quality or draft or waveform. If you turn on draft render, that is not going to render any 3D light and shadows and all those things. And if you want the full resolution render, you are gonna do that. Or if you check half, just like the preview, it is going to make a half resolution render, that is going to be 960 by 540 out of this 1080p render. And you can go to third or quarter quality render also if you need it. And then disk cache on read only, and from there you can change the frame rate in the render output also, but it's better not to mess these things here. And if you want any kind of change specifically for frame rate, you should do it in the actual composition. So you are not gonna even be needed to use this render settings window, but these options are there. And so the main thing that you need to change here is the lossless, this window. And you also, if you this icon, if you press here, you can get different type of lossless settings. And actually what you can do now, you can click on the lossless is basically, you are not gonna, if you are not gonna open this lossless settings and you directly are gonna hit render, then it is going to create an AVI file, and it is not going to give you, you're not gonna lose any information of your rendering. That's why it's called lossless. And obviously not a lot of time you're gonna wanna use this AVI format. Then we have wide variety of format here. We have DPX sequence rendering, we have if JPEG, this kind of the sequences are basically image sequences. And then we can only audio to we can render only audio to MP4 or WAV files. Or we have different type of image sequence, again PNG, Photoshop. Then we have QuickTime for MOV .mov rendering. Then we have all these things, but for last 2 or 3 version of maybe from starting from the CC versions of After Effects, we don't have H.264 Pro anymore, which is the one of the best viewing quality render, which is the MP4 render. And that option we don't have anymore in After Effects, but we can get that through Adobe Render Queue, on what is it called, Media Render Queue. And we are gonna check out that thing later on, but let's select PNG sequence. And especially when you are gonna need PNG sequence is when you are gonna export your animation or whatever it is in image sequence, and PNG is going to this is basically an uncompressed format, and this is going to give you a nice result with alpha channel. And that means basically you can from the video channel video output window, you have to select the RGB plus alpha. Now this is very important. If you don't check RGB plus alpha, you are not going to get any alpha information. What you are going to get is this gray color of the composition background. And if you turn on RGB plus alpha, then you will get this kind of transparency around the opaque areas. And so this is RGB plus alpha, and you don't need to go to the format option for this one, because the default one is quite enough. And if you go to QuickTime, then you have a few format options here. Again, the RGB plus alpha you can check on and off for this one, and you can go to the format, and from there you can actually choose animation, which is actually going to be the uncompressed format, and different type of compression is here. When you are gonna work for a client, and he might gonna specify you with some different kind of compression of your rendering, and then you're gonna use it. Here you also get this H.264 codec if you need that. Then you can change the video quality from, it's safe to keep it 100. And then you get actually this information, which is the bitrate settings. This is another very useful thing. Now normally when you choose animation or this kind of uncompressed format, it creates a huge file. Let's say for a 2-minute film that you are making, it is going to create close to 100 GB render outputting file. So that is obviously not for, you cannot play it in VLC. That's not for, I mean, I don't know why when it is going to be necessary. Otherwise, if you are maybe it's in the production, you want to going to use it for color correction and all these things, that is a different thing. But you can actually limit the size from here. So that is the limit bitrate information. If you check in, so it is not letting me, that means okay, you can turn on limit bitrate. So let's select another thing, and then this option is turned on. So if you select any other compression, and then you can limit the bitrate, and you can make it 1 Mbps, 1 kbps, 4 kbps. So a basic general idea is for your if it is a 10-minute short film and you make it like 4 kbps, I have seen that it is going to be around 700 to 800 MB. So that's a fair size. I mean you don't really lose a lot of information, and that gives you a nice quality MOV rendered preview. But when you are working in the production, I will suggest you guys, as you guys are animator, you guys do image sequences. Okay, the first good thing of image sequence is anytime you can stop the rendering from in any point, because rendering takes a lot of time, especially in 3D, but in this in 2D animation also, when you are gonna have a lot of effects and all, and that actually takes a lot of time to render. With an image sequence you can stop the rendering anytime, and maybe the next day you can start the rendering from the next frame. That you cannot do with a image with a video format. And also you get a very good quality output from image sequences. But normally editors in our live action department, they are not gonna take image sequences. Only if they take image sequence, that is going to be only DPX. Otherwise they are gonna ask MOV files. So other than QuickTime and PNG sequence, the next thing that we need to see is how can we get a H.264 render in After Effects. And now when you are gonna choose all of these things, maybe I'm gonna choose RGB PNG sequence, and gonna turn on RGB plus alpha. And then the next thing we need to do for specifically for image sequences is, when you are gonna specify the output path, then you can see the first thing is going to be the name of the file, because it's going to create multiple number of files with this hash. This means 0001, 002. This kind of naming convention is going to be there. So you can change the name from here also. By default it's going to take the sequence name, and maybe this is scene 1 underscore shot 2 or whatever it is. And then we have this option, which is create subfolder automatically. Here also you need to give the name, maybe the same name, maybe not. So it's going to create a subfolder for you automatically, and in that subfolder all the files or image files are gonna be there. So this is one very important thing. And then you can just hit render. And another thing is how we render H.264, and for that we have this option in the export window. We have this option for what's export, add to media encoder queue, and the shortcut is shift alt control M. And if we do that, we are gonna wait for a few seconds. And this is another product of Adobe Media Encoder CC. And this shortcut function is going to work only when you have same version of Adobe product. Obviously you're going to use what is it called, genuine Adobe products. So now automatically it is going to add the actual that composition that we are working, and it is here. And from here you can choose H.264, and you can change the bitrate from here also. So this is a high bitrate rendering, that is basically going to be, you can see the 4 MB, you can see from here the maximum limit is here 4 Mbps, 10 Mbps, and that is going to make a this is a 6-second animation, and the size is going to be 8 MB. So from here also you can limit the size. So the 4 Mbps is quite enough. That is going to create a 3 MB file, and even if you do 1 Mbps, that is even quite good. So you can change the file size from here by changing the bitrate, and all the other options are there, what kind of audio and files that you want, stereo or Dolby and all those things. हाँ हाँ सब करेगा. H.264 I'm saying that यहाँ पे भी PNG फाइल बोलो, MOV बोलो, जो भी है सब यहाँ पे भी होगा, सेम चीज़ यहाँ पे भी होगा. बट H.264 वाला आफ्टर इफेक्ट्स में अभी नहीं है, वो ओनली यहाँ पे मिलेगा. इवन इन प्रीमियर यू गेट H.264 पर so this is how you render footage. But here another thing is when you select any image sequence from here. So let's say, where is sequence, JPG image sequence. From here it does not create a subfolder automatically for you. You need to create a subfolder, and then it is going to save all those things. Another thing, let's go back to H.264, and from here you can actually choose different presets. You can see that we have all these different presets for Android phone and tablet and all this thing. And if you go down, okay, this is the one, match source and the high bitrate, and you can choose the medium bitrate, which is going to actually give you the 1 Mbps file size. No, the 3 Mbps even, it's quite good. So I normally use these two, high bitrate and medium bitrate. Okay, so this was the rendering in After Effects, and after that let's see what you have got. So let's me. Another thing is, when you are going to choose which footage you want to do a auto rotoscopy in After Effects, because you can simply create mask around the character. Sometimes you don't have a green screen footage, and you only way left is to do the masking frame by frame, or you can skip few frames if you are lucky. So now the thing is, you can create masks around the character, and I will suggest you do not create a mask on top of, on overall the character, but create masks separately for different body parts. Okay, and you can keyframe them frame by frame. So that is one way to do it. Create multiple masks and keyframe them frame by frame, and then you get a character without a background. Now another thing is using the rotoscopy auto rotoscopy tool. But when we have a auto rotoscopy tool, why we need to do that kind of tedious process of masking manually? Now the thing is, auto rotoscopy tool is not going to work for you in each and every scenario. um, Now I'm going to bring this footage here. And now which footage to choose for auto rotoscopy? Few requirements are there. One is that footage have to be clean. Clean in terms of there is not the footage is completely in focus, the footage is not grainy or noisy. um, and the third and the most essential thing is the background of the subject here, that can be a character or whatever it is, and the character, the main subject, and the background, there should be some contrast of color contrast or luminance contrast difference between them. So we can see we have the character and the background color, and that is some contrast difference here. And but here we don't have too many difference here. Okay, so in these areas After Effects is going to be able to, like the magic wand tool in Photoshop, After Effects will be able to detect these areas as an edge, and or do the rotoscopy process almost automatically for each and every frame. But here After Effects is going to have some trouble. Another thing is, here in this small gap, these areas are a little bit hard to detect, so maybe you have to do a little bit more frame by frame job here, so to add extra information whether which areas to add or not. So let me show you the process. So how you can rotoscope the footage. So to do that, at first select the footage and select this button. This is the roto brush tool. So if you select it, and you will see nothing is going to happen. That's because you need to open the footage in, not in the composition panel, but in the footage panel, so or the layer window. So I'm going to double click the footage, and it is going to open in the layer window. And now you can see a green circle icon, that is the brush icon. And now I'm going to turn on from the window, I'm going to turn on the brush menu, and here I'm going to increase the brush diameter. And at first what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a overall selection, so make sure you are in a full view resolution. Now I'm going to do a overall selection of the character. So After Effects is going to detect all the edges, and you can see some unnecessary areas are getting selected. Now I'm going to decrease the brush diameter and again add some other areas a little bit. Oh, sorry. To deselect a few areas or decrease some areas, what you have to do is you have to press Alt, and that will do the opposite. Subtract some areas actually. Again. These areas are not gonna come like that, and I'm not gonna try it. And again, smaller brush, and I'm going to subtract these areas. Ah, that is the reason we are gonna use this tool. Obviously, and again, only reason only when you are gonna use it. I mean, if you're not, you don't want a specific, I mean, detailed, what do I say, this kind of separation from the background. You need a overall thing, and also you don't have a green screen footage, you have no other way to do it. And ultimately, if the manual rotoscopy process is going to take more time than this, then only you are going to use this tool. Otherwise, uh, it is not going to give you a lot more clean result. So now the thing is, you can see a little bit gray here. There is some arrows here, you can expand it to the end. And now you can, by pressing uh, page down, you can go frame by frame, and you can see it is automatically changing. Some areas it is giving us some unwanted thing, or some areas, I mean, because these colors, there is no lot of color contrast here, so it is actually deselecting these areas. And these things are gonna happen, you have to continuously feed information in it, so how much you need to add or subtract. Again, if you have a, I mean, bright color background, this wall is quite light color, so with the highlight of the with the light, हाँ highlight के साथ ये बाहर जा रहा है पूरा, मतलब मैच कर रहा है. So now the thing is, rather than going frame by frame, this is just a quick demonstration. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit space. So I'm going to just hit space, and automatically it is going to add the areas it can. So you can see this thing, ये बहुत ज़्यादा जा रहा था, तो ये this information ले नहीं पाया, and then this information. So it is better to do frame by frame and add or subtract few areas. But you can see overall we can actually subtract the character from the background. না পেছন দিকটা ওই নিতে পারলো না, অনেকটা চেঞ্জ হয়ে গেছিল তো, মানে রোটেট হয়ে যাওয়ার জন্য. And few other things are there that I'm going to show you. Obviously this is not a nice result, and obviously it depends on what kind of footage you have. And now the next thing that you are going to do is, now whenever you make this kind of use this rotoscopy tool, it slows down your computer quite a little bit. So for that you need to use this freeze information, that is going to create a bake type of animation type of thing, that is basically going to store the rotoscopy information in your memory. Okay, another thing, I'm going to stop it here. So the thing I need to, because I am going to unfreeze it again, and you can see this green line. This is basically the rotoscopy information. It grows like this, so let it grow till the end. Okay, no, so let's come here, and let me show you another option, which is the edge feather option. Right now if I go back to the composition panel, and here you can see you are getting this character with the transparent background, but the problem is the edges are quite sharp. Okay, so we have a very powerful tool to subtract those get some featheriness in the edges, and like this hair portion here, we cannot simply create that kind of detailed thing with the brush. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click and press here, then we have the edge refine tool, and let's increase the diameter, and if I click and press here, you can see what is going to happen is it is automatically going to detect the inside and the outside of the character, and we also have some gray areas, that means some semi-transparent areas. So it is really amazing, and it works really fast. In my film, in the breakdown, I will show use of this tool quite a lot. And then I can actually, after when I use this tool, some option here get activated, and which is the base refine edge radius, and we can, if we make it, let's say 5 pixels, then it is going to create some feathery edge around the character. So maybe not this much, 3, and it is going to give us that kind of a feathered out look. And you can see this is a little bit better. I'm not gonna say it's quite a bit of change, but all the motion blur type of information that we can get like this. You can see this thing. So now after you have done in the entire thing, you can hit the freeze icon. Another thing is, let me see that whether I have any image with this kind of thing, trees and sky. Then I can separate the trees from the sky very easily, these areas. So let me show you that. So this freezing takes a little bit time, so I'm just going to stop it, because basically that's what you have to do after the auto rotoscopy thing. So let's go to another example, and I will import this image. Maybe I want to subtract the building from the sky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open it in the layer panel, and I'm going to go to the rotoscopy brush, and maybe I'll select all of these areas. So very randomly I will create a selection. This is a huge image, it may take a lot of time. So you can see आऊँगा a little bit of this thing, and maybe not. So just like that. And I'll select all of these areas, and now what I can do is simply go to this tool, and I can click here, oh, so it's not around the edges, so that's why I didn't add it. So maybe I will come here, and you can see. So again it's this much slow because the image size is huge. So this is not perfect, this showing some semi-transparency which should not be there. And maybe these wires, that also I can include. So I'm not gonna add the other ones, so I'm just going to end, make it for one frame. So now in the effects I'm going to change the region to, let's say 10 pixels radius for the soften edges, and that's it. Now I'm going to freeze this thing. Okay, I don't need, sorry, crash na kar jaye. Stop हो गया. So now coming back to the main composition, we'll unfreeze it again. Again, if I come back here, what is the background color? So that's how you can do it. Okay, you can separate the image from the background. This is it for rotoscopy in After Effects. ठीक है. Okay.